Have you ever wanted to play as the monster in one of those dark fantasy horror games? Hey people, voice talking to you, and this is Roots Devour, a new dark fantasy deck builder strategy game where you are the monster in the woods. If you'd like to check this game out for yourself, I'll have a link for you in the description, and right next to that is a link to my full playthrough stream if you'd like to see some more gameplay and my first impressions. It was a night like any other for us, a ranger living in the deep woods, when we were suddenly surrounded by mysterious cultists and transformed into a monstrous evil tree. Shackled with a violent thirst for blood, we began stretching our roots through the forest in search of fresh prey. As we consumed more intelligent beings, our own mind began to expand, and a mysterious plant-like humanoid named Flora introduces us to the ritual worship of a dark forest god we are apparently connected to. This being, called the Mother, accepts offerings of collected blood in exchange for knowledge, power, and otherworldly abilities that can help us in our hunts. Now, it's clear that English isn't the dev's first language, both due to the many translation errors and some wholly untranslated bits, but for the most part, the prose is clear enough to get the message across. But it is also very awkward to read and definitely needs to be cleaned up, especially since they seem to be catering to an English-speaking audience. As for the style of the game, I could gush about this for hours. The UI, the artwork, the color palette, oh, I love it. It's like a mix of Darkwood and Bloodborne, without the gameplay being anything similar to either of those titles. So what is the gameplay like? Well, the system is sort of a card game, where our ultimate goal is to reach one of the endings on a map by exploring and completing events. The game does progress in real time, and we can pause at any point to play cards or consider our strategy. As of the demo, however, time doesn't really have too much of an effect on the world as a whole, and I often forgot that pausing was even an option. Remember though, we're a monstrous tree, so moving around isn't exactly our specialty. Instead of walking from place to place, we move by spending blood to stretch our roots and grab cards on the board. Most of these cards will be living creatures or corpses that we can drain blood from, and depending on the size of the animal, we can gain differing amounts of blood for our efforts. We can stretch from any node we've rooted to in any direction, but the farther we have to reach, the more blood it'll cost us, so make sure each move is worth it. If we run out of blood or try to stretch too far, we will lose precious water instead. Water effectively serves as our health. Lose too much and our tree will wither and die, so be cautious. In order to bridge the gaps between cards on the board, we can spend blood to open a card pack, filled with a number of cards from our deck, which we build by exploring and capturing certain nodes. Each card will have different effects, from simple blood bags to reducing the cost of growth to even mutating targets or destroying obstacles. Cards in the environment will likewise have their own effects, and some will even react to our presence. Predators, for example, will attempt to eat animals we've rooted to, cutting off our advance and stealing precious blood, so deterring or distracting them is the best option. Exploration and expansion is the name of the game here, so using the environment to our advantage and keeping our cards until we need them is super important. And the map here is huge. There's tons of little secrets, special locations, and events for us to find around the world. Oh yeah, there's that strange man who smashes rats with a shovel. Plus, probing the world through branching roots connecting to nodes on the map is an incredibly unique method of exploration that I can't say I've ever seen before. Now, whether we manage to reach an ending or simply run out of blood to expand with, eventually each run will come to an end. When this happens, we can use a special nectar that Flora gave us to transport our body back to Mother's place of worship, which serves as our hub and our skill tree. Here, we can spend a measure of the blood we earned during our runs to unlock boosts by likewise stretching our roots between unlockable nodes, which is honestly really clever. On the other hand, most of these buffs are pretty generic and aren't super rewarding to unlock. Additionally, there aren't any kind of builds in this game, so replayability is mostly down to the routes you take on the map, which randomizes slightly on each run. The map also resets the fog of war, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that, since most of the important stuff stays in roughly the same place. Now, as far as the story goes, things are just a bit thin at the moment. I love the idea of using the cards on the board to act out cutscenes, and the concept is great. I just didn't really feel drawn in or any sense of mystery aside from the side stories like the Rat King and the Giant Tree. Those were neat, if a bit predictable. The rewards for completing stories were also pretty unimpressive. A bunch of blood points or a couple free card packs don't mean much when you've already got twice that amount in waiting or 6 free packs in storage. On that note, the game also becomes very easy very quickly. Becoming exponentially more powerful is obviously part of the concept, but I never felt any risk of losing anything since I could extract at any time with no penalty, and that kind of takes away from the roguelike concept of things. And for a lot of the game, players can completely disregard strategy as long as they keep their cards close together. With strategy in mind, I have to go back to the translation issues. The effects of most of the cards are very poorly explained. Growth, for example, reduces the cost of spreading roots. What the description doesn't tell you is that this bonus only applies when spreading from that specific card, and isn't applied to everything. Now, players can eventually figure this out on their own, so it's not the worst, but stretching over some distances seem to cost water instead of blood, and there isn't a clear reason why, especially when stretching to another card farther away does not. Consistency for the costs, or at least a clear explanation of why this happens, has got to be implemented, or some players are going to get very frustrated very quickly. Also, if the music loops too many times, it just stops for the rest of the run, which is a major mood killer. Growing pains aside, the artistry, style, and general atmosphere of this game brings back so many good memories from Darkwood, Inscryption, and Bloodborne. The UI is so slick, and the theme overall is impeccable. If you want style, this game has it in spades. I'm just the voice in your head though, so how do you feel about Roots Devour? Do you like the minimalistic storytelling, or do you wish there was more detail? What are your thoughts on the exploration methods? Are there any other titles this art style reminds you of? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like helps get the channel through the algorithm and means I get to keep all my blood. If you want to see more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way because I put out new stuff every week. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and you'll be hearing from me again real soon.